I've been consistently releasing music under the name Kaiyo for around about 3 years on streaming platforms now. And in that time, I've released somewhere within the realm of 70 songs, which works out to over 1 song per month released. I recently hit a milestone of 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And amongst all of this, there's a few things that I've picked up along the way. So I thought I'd make this video to share with you guys a couple of things that I've learned as a part of this journey. Before we get into the things that I've learned over the past couple of years, full disclaimer, this is not a video on how to get 100,000 monthly listeners. If you want to watch one of those videos, there is tons of them on YouTube. This is not that. This is a video of me sharing 3 things that I've learned as a part of my journey to 100,000 monthly listeners. And do stick around for the last point that I make, because that is going to be by far the most important in my opinion. And that kind of leads me nicely into the first thing that I've learned. And the first thing I've learned is that there is no quick fix. There is no one solution to achieve 100,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever number of monthly listeners you're looking for. No matter what anyone says, no matter what any of these YouTube or social media gurus tell you, there is no 100% guaranteed way to achieve this. Sure, you can hope to go viral on TikTok, you can hope to land an editorial playlist, or you can even buy streams or buy listeners, and there is no one solution that is just gonna like magically get you streams or followers. And that's really something that I think a lot of new artists and a lot of producers kind of are hoping for. I think people start making music and they think their music is sounding really good, which it probably is, and then they think they're gonna start releasing, and within a month or within 6 months they're going to have this like mass amount of monthly listeners. So I think you kind of need to like just get that out of your head. Some people get really lucky, some people will like land a song on Lo-Fi Girl, or some people will get an editorial playlist with their first track or go viral on TikTok, and yeah, they're going to blow up, and that song might do 1,000,000 streams, it may do more, and you may kind of have this influx of listeners. But that's luck. There's no surefire way to do those things. So I think in my opinion, other than getting lucky and landing one of these kind of viral things or editorial playlists, it really comes down to like a few key aspects. And these are things that you need to be willing to do, not just because you want to grow your numbers, but because you're passionate about your art, you're passionate about your craft. Like the most important thing when it comes to being a producer or releasing music into the world is just to be consistent. I don't mean consistency in terms of releasing every month or every week. People will tell you you need to do that. I actually don't agree. In fact, I just don't believe flat out that you need to be releasing on a regular schedule. I think you should release on your schedule. Quality is always going to come over quantity, 100%. When I talk about consistency, the thing that I'm talking about is consistently making good music. That's always going to be the most important thing if you want to grow your listeners. The other thing that I think you do need to be consistent with is building your brand on social medias or YouTube. Like build a brand around yourself. Along with releasing my music, I've been posting on socials. I started posting on social media, I think around the time, and then I released my first track like back in 2021. If you want to build yourself as an artist, not just to build your numbers, but also just to kind of build your brand and build your network and build a community around yourself. And those things are way more important than numbers. You really want to kind of be present, build your brand, and then that's how you're going to bring people back to your art and back to your music time and time again. So you're going to be converting people from passive listeners into active listeners. And so by having people following me on YouTube, I know for a fact that those people are listening to my music on Spotify or Apple Music or any streaming platform they're using. And by having people following me on Instagram, every time I post about a new release or I post a little work in progress video, hopefully those people are seeing that and then they're engaging, and you can engage with them. And you're kind of just building a like community and building a brand around you as an artist, rather than just like throwing your music onto Spotify and hoping for the best. Those people are going to follow you, and then those people are going to get notified every time you drop a song on Spotify. The second thing that I've learned that I think is really important is just to kind of remember like where you started. There was a time when you had 0 monthly listeners. There was a time when you had less than 1,000 monthly listeners, and that may have been a long time. You may have gone 6 months, it may have gone a year with what you might now consider a low number of monthly listeners. And I do think it's important to remember that even 100 monthly listeners, even 50 monthly listeners is more than you had when you first started. And if you had 50 people in a room wanting to listen to your music, that would be a lot of people. That would be a busy room. It's always worth remembering that. Like, remember the journey you've been on that's got you to the place that you're in. And I'll be honest, once you start getting closer to like 100,000 or 50,000 monthly listeners, or once you have a song that's like doing higher numbers, 1 million streams or 2 million streams, other artists are going to start hitting you up because they're going to want to work with you. Now, some people might be doing it in a disingenuous way because they're going to see you as an artist with a larger number than they've got, and they're going to want to kind of boost their numbers by working with you. But you've got to kind of remember that an artist with 100,000 monthly listeners and a catalog that goes back 2 years or 3 years does look more legitimate than an artist with one song that they've just released and like 0 listeners. People might start messaging you a bit more, or there might be other artists that you've messaged that are now starting to message you because you just look a little bit more legitimate. It's not just for a selfish gain. And try to remember that like you too would look up to artists that are doing those kind of numbers. Be gracious that you're in that position now. It might not last forever. Personally, I try my best to respond to absolutely everyone. You send me a legitimate message that isn't just like collab bro, then I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna try my best to respond to it. If your music's good, I'm gonna fuck with it. I don't care how many monthly listeners you've got. I don't care how many streams you've got. If you're making good music, I'm gonna listen to it. Don't get too big for your boots. Try to remember like that you were in that position. 2 goes for if you're at 10,000 monthly listeners or 20,000 or 50,000. It really doesn't matter. And that is a really nice segue into the third point, and I think the one that is by far the most important when talking about numbers and streams and monthly listeners, and that is honestly, it doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is that it all feels the same. I remember when I first got like my first monthly listener, or when I first got 100 monthly listeners or 1,000 monthly listeners, and being so jazzed that I'd hit those numbers. I remember getting my first 1,000 and then getting 10k and 20k and so on. And each time you hit a new milestone, you get this like ego boost and it feels great, and you've achieved something that maybe you didn't think was possible, which is amazing and should absolutely be celebrated. But it very quickly then turns into onto the next, like what's coming up next. Now I've got to reach 200,000. Now I've got to reach 500,000. Now I've got to aim higher. And essentially what I'm trying to say here is try not to get too focused on the numbers, because when you focus on the numbers, you kind of forget what you're actually trying to do. And what we're all trying to do is make music that we like and put that out into the world and hope that it resonates with some people. If you're releasing great music that you're happy with and you like the way it sounds, then that's amazing. Like, you're smashing it. Don't worry about the numbers. Celebrate your wins, shout about your achievements. I just hit 100,000. That's insane. This year I've done, I think, close to like 3 million streams. That's more than I've ever done before, and more than I think I ever thought I would ever do. And I'm really proud of that. But it's not my focus. My focus is just on making good music, enjoying the process. And I think once you stop worrying too much about the numbers, that becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot easier to just enjoy the journey that you're on. Once you start putting too much pressure on the numbers and putting too much pressure on your monthly listeners, and then maybe one day it starts going down, like, I can guarantee that I'm not going to be at 100,000 monthly listeners forever, maybe not even a long time. Shout out Spotify for putting my latest release on an editorial, because that has given me a big boost. It feels really great to have achieved that, and it feels awesome to have achieved something that I never thought would be possible. But honestly, when that number does drop down, and it is going to drop down, it's going to be okay, because I'm happy with the art that I've created, and just knowing that one person is watching this video or subscribe to my YouTube channel or listening to my music or get something from it is enough. That's enough for me. Because at the end of the day, this number that appears on my Spotify page really doesn't mean anything. What does mean a lot is making music that I love and releasing it out into the world. And so that's why I do what I do.